Uh, And welcome everyone to another exciting adventure of riding through the unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight's guest is someone I am really excited for you all to meet. I've had a wonderful conversation with her. We've talked some offline, and she has fascinating information that I am surprised by and skills. And so I'm going to stop kind of rambling and going all like starstruck over this. And I'm going to hand it over to my amazing guest and allow her to share a little bit about herself with you all. So, with that, I give you the one, the only artistic and galactic extraordinaire, Aurora Belcea.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. I hope I can live up to that amazing intro. That's so sweet of you. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's nice to be here and share some of my experiences with you guys. I am originally from Romania, but I've lived in the States, gosh, about 40 years. So I've lost most of my accent. Some people think I'm Canadian. If I have a couple of drinks, I start to sound Canadian. But in any case, I have lived here for about 40 years. And most of my life, I really haven't had any experiences, paranormal with ETs or anything like that. It was in 2020, after a pretty intense meditation retreat, that I had an experience that pretty much set me on a course towards exploring, ETs and the paranormal and star families and galactic connections and things of that nature. But it was a very sudden thing that happened after that meditation retreat. And I can tell you about it if you'd like to hear
Yes,
my story
please.
about how I got started into this topic. So it's night. My husband's already snoring next to me, and I'm trying to fall asleep. And as I'm trying to meditate myself to sleep, all of a sudden in my mind's eye, I see this image very, very clearly, where I am lying down. I can't move. I'm paralyzed. And I see three little grays, just the typical grays. They had these dark gray uniforms. They seemed very robotic. They had no emotionality whatsoever. It seemed very mechanical. And they scared me because it seemed to me like they were very task-oriented. And no matter what I had to say about what was going on, it was not going to matter. And that really, really terrified me. So there's three of them. One is over by my shoulder. There's another one down on the side on my left side. And there's another one down by my feet. And they have, like, I remember thinking these instruments that they had reminded me of the Jetsons, the little, that style, futuristic style, like sort of Jetsons cartoon. type of instruments. And I'm not quite sure what they were doing. It seemed to be some sort of an exam. And I could feel on my body, I could feel the pressure where they were touching me, but it didn't hurt. It's like when you go to the dentist and they give you that shot to numb you before, they go ahead and do the dental work, and you don't feel any pain, but you do have some feeling, you can feel, still the touch. So it was like that. But I was terrified because I had never been in a situation like that before. This was like a spontaneous recall. And it scared me to the point where I opened my eyes and the image didn't go away. I was still in my bedroom. I could tell that I was still lying in my bed. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. But on top of the image of my bedroom was this other image with these grays. And I don't know where I was, but it was some sort of table. And I remember it was hard. It was not very comfortable. And I was completely terrified. I could only move my eyes. And as I did that, to my right, there was a taller gray, much taller than the other guys, exactly the same facial features. He had these huge black eyes, and he was leaning over me, holding his hands like this, which I thought was really weird. And basically telling me telepathically, we're not trying to hurt you. We're not trying to hurt you. You can relax. You can calm down. We're not trying to hurt you. And he was very emotional, very loving, very empathetic, very caring. But I could feel these emotions and hear him in my head, but his facial expression was so blank that I couldn't process. I didn't understand what was going on. And it terrified me because he didn't look kind and he didn't look gentle. He felt kind and gentle and loving, but he didn't look that way at all. He had these, completely black eyes that I was terrified. I was absolutely. And I remember at some point, I thought to myself, I don't care what you guys are doing as long as I don't know about it, is what I ended up telling him, because I got the sense that they weren't hurting me just from, his demeanor, so to speak. He didn't seem aggressive. The way he was leaning over me, he was very caring. I figured these guys weren't really hurting me, but I didn't want to know about it because I couldn't stand it emotionally. It was just too much. And so as soon as I said that, this image with the gray started to fade away. It was like it was withdrawing, so to speak. And the image of my bedroom was becoming more and more clear, more in the foreground. And as this image was fading away, my terror was going with it. And I was feeling more and more relaxed to the point where I became intrigued. And I said, well, maybe I can tolerate it. And when it started coming back, the terror came back with it. And I said, no. I'm not going to do this. I can't handle it. And it went away. Now, I sat up as soon as I could. And when I sat up in my bed, outside of my window, we live in a condo. We're on the second floor of a high rise. And right where my balcony railing was, there were these strange blinking lights. At first, I thought maybe they were emergency vehicles because they were blue and white and green. And I was like, why is it doing so up high off the ground if it's an emergency vehicle? And I turned to my husband to tell him, honey, there's some weird lights outside our window. And by the time I finished that phrase, they were gone. And I had the curtains drawn, so I couldn't see what was behind the curtain. But I got up and I pulled the curtain. It was nothing there. There were no vehicles in the street. They didn't drive away because I would have heard them. So I can't explain that experience at all. I don't know how I was in two places at once, or it seemed like I was in two places at once. These lights outside my window pretty much confirmed that it wasn't my imagination, because I was fully awake through this. I mean, as I'm trying to fall asleep and meditate, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm dreaming and I'm having a nightmare. So that's why I opened my eyes. But when the image didn't go away, even when I opened my eyes, I was fully conscious at that point. I have no idea how to explain that. And I actually haven't heard anyone having that sort of experience. So it would be nice, to have some confirmation of, anybody who's had a similar situation where, being in two places at once kind of a thing. I don't know. That was very, very strange. But in any case, in that moment, I just became fascinated with the whole ET and UFO phenomenon. And I started researching. I didn't have any frame of reference up to that point, aside from just a typical pop culture gray, the little grays with the big black eyes. That's all I. But this gray, this tall gray who was standing by the side, my right side, with his arms folded like this, I thought that was really odd. And I never really thought about it until I started looking into different types of ETs. And I came across an image of a mantis being who apparently hold their hands like this. They have this kind of strange way of folding their hands. And this is another way that I know that I wasn't making it up, because I would not have come up with this on my own. It's like, why? This is such an odd position, to be holding your hands. And for me, because I didn't have a frame of reference, I didn't see him as a mantis being, as an insectoid, or he took pity on me, projected an image that was more tolerable. Because let me tell you, having a bug standing by your bedside, that's like 6 feet tall, that would have probably sent me over the edge, because it was terrifying enough as it was. And by the way, they don't like to be called bugs. So it's very offensive from what I understand. I've been told that a couple of times, but in any case, just sharing that with the rest of your audience. If anybody has any connection with insectoids, they really do not like to be called bugs. And so I saw that, a lot of people who were trying to process their experiences were making drawings of, these beings that they encountered. So I tried to do that. And I can share with you the very first drawing that I did. Let me see it up here. Okay. So I'm not sure what it is that you're seeing on your screen.
Let me see. Here, I'll bring it up on screen. It's the folder that has all the images in it.
Yes, it's supposed to be the one with the gray that I opened up. Hang on just a second. Let me see here. Because I had it out, but when I opened the file itself, it looks like you're just seeing the folder. You're not seeing what's inside.
Yeah. So what I can do is I'll remove this, and do what you can do is do cancel the share that you have, open the image folder to an image, and then share that image, and it should allow you to fast forward to the other images as well.
Let's see.
So here's this one.
Yes, this is the one that I was trying to show you. Yeah, this is the one with the hands. He had his hands folded. And I remember when he was leaning over me, his head was huge and triangular. And I wasn't happy with this drawing at all, because I couldn't get his head to be wide enough. And I drew this shortly after I had that experience. I think it was maybe within a month or so. I really was just so fascinated by what had happened to me. After I spent some time doing some research and I came across mantis beings, I found this, I guess, a drawing that somebody had made. I believe that's what it was, of a mantis. And I tried to draw him again, but not so much by what he looked like to me when I saw him, but more about how he felt to me. And when that happened, this is what came out. And I know that you're probably not seeing it. Let me see if I can do that again like I just did earlier. Technology is great. Isn't it though? Okay, so let's see. Alrighty. Are you seeing
this one down? And
oh, there you go. Okay, so you have it. Yeah. So this was 3 years later, just to kind of give you an idea of how long it took me, to research this. Now, this is not what I saw, but this is what it felt like. looking at this being who was just leaning over me. And at this point, I had, like I said, a larger frame of reference when it came to mantis beings. And so that's how I drew him. Now, this mantis, I've had experiences with him from time to time, repeatedly. But at that point in 2023, I was really just starting to get more familiar with mantis beings. And after I drew that, and again, I kept trying to understand, what was happening with that experience. I kept drawing different versions of this being. And you can kind of see how it evolved over time. Let me bring this one up. You can see the new one. It says 3 down there. So this one now, it's gone from basically just lines to a little bit more detail. Now it's more in color. And in this image, it was the color, the purple. There was some shimmering purplish thing about him. I don't know if it was a robe or something. There was this feel of purple, of something ancient and very wise and very well respected. And for some reason, this deep purple came to mind. And you can see that he looks a lot friendlier here than he did in the other image. And again, this is not what I saw. Up to this point, I had not seen him in my mind's eye looking like this. It was just basically what he felt like. After that, I had another experience where I went to a friend's house for a CE5. This was in 2023, actually. It was shortly after this. And I don't know what happened there, but suddenly I had this desire to start drawing portraits of ETs. And so I started doing that, and I decided at one point that I was going to draw a picture of him because, again, I had been fascinated by this individual and the image of him for 3 years at that point. And this is, I guess, my 4th version of him. This is before I colored it. Now, if you can see, I don't know if your viewers can see at the bottom, the progression of the drawings. I mean, I started out with just very simple lines, and 3 years later, I can draw this I didn't take any art classes. When I was a math teacher until I retired, and my students used to poke fun at me because all I could draw was stick figures. We'd do word problems on the board and they tried to keep them entertained and draw stick figures. So I was pretty amazed when I saw this. This is by far the most accurate as far as what he felt like. And I finally was able to get his head and his eyes just the right proportions, I guess, was just the way he felt. This is what he felt like to me. Now, at this point, I think I might have seen him in my mind's eye once. And I think this drawing was based on that experience as well. This was really, really fascinating. I'm out on my balcony watering my plants, listening to music, and all of a sudden, in my mind's eye, clear as a bell, there's this head of a mantis being that looks very much like what I just drew, but his mandibles were open. And it almost looked like he was gonna eat me. But with this image came this overwhelming sense of compassionate love and being loved by this being. And it brought me to tears. It was so intense, this feeling of being loved. And the way that I know I wasn't making it up is because I would not have ever associated an image of this insect that's coming out to bite me, or that's what it looked like. I would have never associated that image with this feeling of being loved so intensely. It made me cry. As it turned out, he was smiling. He wasn't trying to eat me or anything, but when they smile, they open up their mandibles, and it looks kind of scary. I mean, to me, it looked really scary. And for about 30 minutes after that, I had this complete shift in perspective where I recognized how I was projecting my own reality, how I was actually the creator of everything that I was seeing. It was a shift in perspective. I mean, I wasn't hallucinating or seeing anything differently than I'm seeing with, my eyes every single day. It was just a shift in perspective, a shift in understanding as to what my role was as a creator being and how I was responsible and accountable for my life experience. And even though in this moment, I don't have that understanding anymore. It was a visceral understanding. I was experiencing this understanding in my bones. I don't have that now anymore. It only lasted for about 30 minutes. But that experience changed me profoundly because I was able to see my reality from a different perspective. And now I had two different views on my life experience. And that was very expansive. It really expanded my understanding of myself and my understanding of reality. It was consciousness expanding, I guess, if you want to use those terms. And I remember it was so intense emotionally, and just these downloads that I was getting. I came inside to tell my husband that I don't know what's going on with me. It's like, am I getting enlightened or something? And I started to tell him what was going on. And as I was talking about it and rationalizing it, I could feel it fade away because I was no longer connecting with this being. Now I was rationalizing, trying to explain to myself what was going on. So would it have lasted more than 30 minutes if I hadn't decided that, oh my gosh, I really need to tell somebody about this? I honestly don't know. But he has shown up on a number of occasions. He is probably the one being that I've had the most intense contact with, and most consistently, I would have to say. Now, I have gone on and I also colored him because this being also is a member of a council, the Council of Eight. It's a council of ETs that I guess I could get into in a little bit, because that's another interesting group that I've had an experience with before I even knew anything about ETs. So let's see, there he is. This is the final copy. And so I colored him and I wanted to give the sense of his vibration. There was like this buzzing about him that was very powerful and very, very soothing. It was just like waves, like undulating waves of vibration that just resonated with my whole being. I mean, it was literally like my body was vibrating. And if you look at the patterns, those are, I was trying to depict how that felt, these waves of radiating vibrations that were just in tune with my own internal frequency somehow. We resonated together. I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to say. And that's basically what I was trying to show with the pattern in the background. And for me, at least, it really depicts it quite well. I don't know what other people get from it when they look at it, but I can say that this image is perfect as far as how this being feels to me. And to me, it's fascinating to just look at my own process, how I started and how I didn't really understand what I was looking at. And I kept exploring and trying different things. And as I was becoming increasingly more and more focused on this being, he eventually made contact like he did when I was out on my balcony watering my flowers. That wasn't the only one. He's come, since then a number of times. I was at another meditation retreat, and as I'm sitting there, in my mind's eye, he appears again just to say hello. I hadn't seen him in a while. And so when I come out of meditation and I'm walking to my room, right outside my room, there is an actual real praying mantis that was about this big, 8 inches long. I'd never seen one before in my life. And it just turned its head and it looked at me. It was right in front of my door. So I knew that was confirmation that that was him, and it blew my mind away. I took a couple of pictures of him, and then when I turned around to put my phone away, I looked back and he was gone. I didn't see him walk away. He just disappeared. So that was pretty neat. Another time he came, this was at another meditation retreat. I go to these retreats once a year. And I remember during one of the meditations, it felt like somebody poured the entire contents of their computer in my head. It was like this download of symbols that I couldn't identify. And I tried to draw them, but I couldn't. They weren't static. It was like they were moving somehow. So I couldn't really portray them on paper. But if I had to think of a shape to associate with them, they looked like Japanese characters, the writing characters, Japanese script, and they were golden and they were just funneling into my head. Now, the weird thing that happened after this, when I came home, is I realized that I remembered how to do telekinesis. It's like all of a sudden, I'm like, I know how to do this. And I'm not talking about moving furniture across the room, okay? There are people on YouTube, there's plenty of videos on YouTube with people who do spectacular things, okay, with their telekinesis skills. But what I did is, it's called a psi wheel. It's like you take a pin and you fold a little piece of aluminum foil and you put it on top of the pin, and then you look at it and it starts to spin. And the first time I did that, it blew my mind away, but I dismissed it as, oh, it must have been just the air in the room. So I put a jar over it, this glass jar over it. And I figured, you know what, if I can still move it when it's under there, then I know it's for real. And I did. And it blew my mind away. And it went like 360 degrees several times. There was absolutely no doubt that I was moving it. And I'm still processing that. To me, it was just like I remembered how to do it. Everybody knows how to do it. But we're never taught as children how to practice. And so for me, it literally seemed like I was remembering how to do something that I had learned before. It's just that this time I was doing it in this body instead of a different body. It was as if, the closest analogy I can give you is if you lose a limb and now you have to wear a prosthetic leg. You knew how to walk before you lost your limb, but with a prosthetic leg, you have to learn how to walk again. That's what it reminded me of. It was like I'm in this prosthetic replacement body or something, and I have to remember how to do this again, although I've always known how to do it. And so that's what happened after those symbols. And then an Arcturian showed up and taught me that this thing that I was doing wasn't meant as a parlor trick. It was actually to manipulate energy flow in my own physical body and also in the body of someone else. It was like a healing thing that she taught me. And amazingly enough, my mom has fibromyalgia and just about every autoimmune disease that you can think of. She's in chronic pain all the time. And I remember the first time I did this thing to her for about 30 minutes, she was pain-free for almost a week. My husband, who's very skeptical, he keeps asking me, he has this ache, that ache, and he's pain-free for about 3 days. Now, it's temporary, but still, it's pretty amazing to me that actually happens. I mean, I have to go by what they're telling me. They have no reason to lie to me. Plus, I have multiple sclerosis, and I used to be in a wheelchair, and I'm no longer in a wheelchair. I've gone snowboarding just 2 years ago. So going from a wheelchair to being, more or less fully functional, I get very tired very easily, but I have regained a lot of my motor function from this practice. Like I said, I didn't ask for any of it. It just sort of came. So that's, pretty much how this being has been involved in my life in, basically some very significant moments he has been there and has, given me downloads and basically introduced me to new ways of being and new ways of understanding. So that's his name. Now, the name that appears, with his portrait is Chica, but I don't know that that's his name. There is another person who has a connection with this Council of Eight, and Chica is one of the beings on that council. His name is Kevin Briggs. He's written a book. You would love to have him on your show. He's a very, very interesting individual, and I didn't know him until this whole telekinesis thing happened, and I decided to seek out other people who have had similar experiences. And I went to a UFO meeting and walked in, and as soon as I saw him, I knew I had to talk to that guy. So I did, and we've been friends ever since. We're actually co-authoring a book where we have, my artwork and the stories that go with my artwork, and some of his articles, and some other people have contributed to it, but it's still a work in progress. In any case, he actually met Chica when he was a little boy, and it's been very interesting to know him because I have recognized that I've had contact from this Council of Eight in 2014, which was 12 years ago, long, long before my 2020 experience. So I have been on somebody's radar probably for a while. I just didn't know that I was until 2020. So I guess something happened in 2020 when, I guess I was supposed to come online, or however you want to look at it. So I know this being exists, not just because of my own experiences and the things that I'm physically able to do, but also because there's another person whom I know and I trust, who also speaks about this being in a very similar way that I do. So I don't know if you want me to go into the Council of Eight, or if you have any questions about mantis beings.
Well, I do have one thing about your experience where you were like talking about being in two places at once.
Yeah.
And I have done that once or twice, and it's a term called bilocating, to where you exist in one place, but you also exist in another place.
But are you aware of both places simultaneously?
Not in like the moment. It's like afterwards, somebody will say, "Oh, I saw you here," and I'm like,
"Okay,
I was there," and then I'll go, "Oh, yeah, I remember now. You were doing this, yeah," and it's like I'll get the memory after, but
I see.
It might be that you have the ability to bilocate and have a conscious tether that allows you to experience both at the same time.
I know, and I don't know what the difference is between bilocating and astral travel or remote viewing, to be honest with you. But I did have another experience with a mantis being where I was meditating in my meditation room, and I knew that I was there, while my astral body, or I don't know what part of me that was not physical, was on this ship. Somehow I ended up on this ship with insectoids. And that's an interesting story in and of itself.
My understanding is bilocating it's almost like your energy is forming in one place, and your solid shell or human form is in another place, and so you're like two places at once. But remote viewing is you're projecting your consciousness and your spirit energy out to see what's there, like a specific target in mind. And astral traveling, I view it kind of more as out of body, to where we leave the body and we move around and have experiences in an energetic form. So that's my understanding of the three differences. I could be wrong. That's from my personal experience, that's what they are. And
Yeah.
so I'll share that with you. And one of the things, too, that I find so interesting when you talk about, these experiences with the mantis and the fact that he showed up like on the planet and said, "This is what we are here, but this is what we are out there." I've often wondered, and you've kind of gave me a little bit of validation of this thought that we talk about the star beings or extraterrestrials are here among us,
Hmm.
but they don't look like us, and so we may not see them. And like, I'll use the term just because that's what we do for clarification, insectoids.
Hmm.
How many times, have we gone somewhere where we see this shadow image of a bug crawl by or an insect go by, and we're like, did I just see that? No, I'm imagining it because it's not there. But I'm thinking we were aware of a visitation
Hmm.
by that race.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're spot on there. We've been conditioned to dismiss things that are not tangible. In our culture, if you can't measure it, if you can't see it and another person can't validate that it's there, then it doesn't really exist. And that's, you can't trust yourself. You can't trust your intuition. You can't trust your gut. We've been conditioned to um, perceive our reality through that distortion. And it's, it's unfortunate because a lot of these beings don't communicate at a 3D level because they don't function in our 3D reality. And because of that, they have different communication modalities that are more telepathic or more energetic or more frequency related or, in dream time. And we dismiss them because they are not part of shared reality, which is the concrete, what conventional reality, what we can perceive through our five senses. And there is a lot going on through the sixth sense, the mind. And that's why I really enjoy meditating, because it really helps me to connect in that way. But that's just what works for me. That doesn't mean everybody should meditate. um, but
And
like you said, yeah, we dismiss a lot of things that are really real. They are real. Yeah.
and I just wanted to point out on this image of Chica, I'll put it up real quick, where you're talking about the waves of energy and everything. I was
Hmm.
like, I kept feeling like I was getting the telepathic message. Like it's the telepathy coming off of
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And it's like you were able to picture it so well. And it's like, I was like
Hmm.
looking at it going, that's telepathy around him.
Yes, actually, the way that I understand it is the beings in those portraits use those portraits to project their energy into our space. And what you just described is very much like a lot of the reactions that I get on other drawings that I've made, where there's something more to it than just the colors on the paper. And that I don't take credit for. That's not me. Okay. Yes, I draw whatever it is that I draw, but the image comes to life. That has nothing to do with me or my art skills or whatever. First of all, I don't have skills. I don't know where these skills came from. I wasn't born with them. So clearly, I am, I guess, um, I don't know what the right word is, because I don't want it to sound, ambassador, somebody who's, I don't know, connecting people, some sort of bridge. I don't know what else to call it. There's some conduit that is, I guess, coming
Like
from someplace through me
like
and
an
all over the
envoy.
paper. Like a what?
An envoy.
Yeah, there you go. That'll work. Yeah, that'll work. And yeah, it's I mean, you can look, if you look at all the drawings that I've made, like this series with the mantis being, you can see how, they literally came, they weren't alive until this very last one. None of the other ones have this the same kind of feel. And that's what I mean. It's not what I draw. I really don't think it's got to do with what I am doing. I really believe that if I can get in touch or in tune or aligned with or entrained with the frequency of the being that I'm drawing, that drawing will actually be able to convey the energy of that being. And I'm not sure how that happens with pen and paper. I have no idea, because it's not intentional on my part. It just sort of happens, I guess.
Right. And you mentioned the Council of Eight, and
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you know one who was on the Council of Eight besides Chica? Like, what other
Yeah.
representatives were there? And two
Yes.
is, how did you end up in their space and being like tapped by them, so to speak?
How? I don't know. It's a very good question, but I was in a car accident in 2014. And that's when I had to retire because I was disabled. Like I said, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis afterwards. It was a really bad time because I had lost my job. I had lost my ability to move. I had lost my whole life. At the time, I really believed my life had been turned upside down. But now when I look at it, it was actually turned right side up. Considering how my life really improved it's much better now than it was, at least as far as the space in my head. I'm a lot more with it than I used to be. In any case, I have been meditating for about 30 years. And after that accident, I just couldn't. I was not in the right space in my head to go sit on a cushion and be in silence. And I was in pain. I was feeling sick, so I was spending a lot of time basically just binge watching Netflix. It's really what I was doing. It had been going on for months. And there was this one day, my kids went to school, my husband went to work, and where's my remote? Basically, is what I was after. And I had this nudge that, I should really go meditate. I haven't done that in a while. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. But it kept insisting, this nudge. And I didn't realize that it was from outside of myself until I finally said, you know what, let me just go and do it. And so I went into my meditation room, which is basically just the little closet under the stairs. And as soon as I sat down on my cushion, I closed my eyes. This shower of unconditional love that permeated every molecule of my body just fell on me like a waterfall. And it moved me. It was so compassionate and so loving. And then this being communicate. I was afraid to open my eyes. Let me put it that way, because I wasn't meditating. I hadn't meditated at all. I was still very, very conscious, but it was so intense. I was afraid of what I might see. Now, this is way before ETs and any of that. Okay. So I thought it was an angel because I'm, Christian. I was born Christian. I don't go to church or anything, but I'm familiar with that faith and the I guess avatars of that faith, if you want to call them that way. But in any case, this being, after this whole waterfall of compassionate love, started to communicate with me telepathically and with words. And he repeated this phrase twice: this is not a punishment, referring to whatever was happening in my life. And he said, this is not a punishment. And it's interesting that he said that, because that was exactly where I was going with it, that I was being punished for something. I was really spiraling in a very negative direction. I was depressed. It was a really, really difficult time. But in any case, he said that, and I believed him somehow. And then he said something else that I've never been able to quite understand what he meant by it. He was referring to a higher being. And I thought at the time, he was referring to God, but it didn't seem like God. It wasn't like the supreme being. It was somebody higher. And he didn't use a word. It was just a sense of, the big guy or the guy upstairs. And what he said was, he is pleased with your progress. And I'm like, what progress? First of all. And then he did the shower of love again, and then he left, and that was it. And I popped out of my meditation cushion and went straight to the phone to call my husband and tell him what had happened. I was bawling because it was such an emotional experience. And so I told Kevin Briggs, I told him that story, and he actually confirmed that that was one of the beings from the Council of Eight. And the being that he was referring to was of the Council of Eight, but just sort of the most, the being in charge, or sort of not a leader, but more like a coordinator. That's who he was referring to. And came to see me, his name was Ort, and he was referring to this other being named Ra. Now, Ort is a fifth dimensional Arcturian, and I drew a portrait of him. I can share that with you. He was so unbelievably compassionate that when I drew him, I wanted to capture that. And what's interesting was that he wouldn't sit for a portrait. It's like I couldn't get a feel of him, because he actually wanted me to draw him more realistically than I have drawn, than any of the other drawings that I made. And so I was afraid to try that style, because I didn't think that I could actually do it. But he kept telling me, you got to learn how to do this and go watch YouTube videos. And I fought him for the longest time. And eventually I said, okay, fine, I'm going to go do it. And I did. And this is what came out. Now, I also have a colored version of him, but I don't know if I don't like this one better, because this is how he felt. The compassion, it was like this really pure energy, pure frequency that was just unbelievably loving in a way that I have never experienced before. So his name, this is Ort. I'm going to give you the other one too, the one that is colored, so you can see what that looks like. There you go. You see it down there? And yeah, you can pick your favorite. This is what he looks like colored. And the curves all around him, those were just that energy that he was putting out, this compassionate love that was just swirling. And like I said, this cascade, this waterfall of just compassionate love. And just the compassion was unbelievable. I had never experienced anything like that before. It was just pure, unconditional, compassionate love. It was amazing. So Ort has a partner. Her name is Dee, and it was the two of them who actually introduced themselves to Kevin when he was a little boy in the bathtub when he was 8 years old. And I'm going to let him tell that story. He's written a book about it. And so they are fifth dimensional Arcturians. And a lot of the people who have seen this, their portraits say, well, aren't Arcturians blue? Well, not necessarily. Just like humans aren't all one color. Even grays are not all gray. Some are whiter, some are even purple, some are yellow. So not all Arcturians are blue. The one who taught me how to use my skills with the telekinesis thing to manipulate energy, I call it Arcturian Reiki because I don't know what else to call it. She was blue and she didn't have any hair. And I drew a picture of her too, a drawing of her. But in any case, this is Ort, and his partner, her name is Dee. I didn't really get to spend too much time with her because she seemed to be very busy with other things. I don't have a connection with her nearly as deeply as I do with Ort. But she did show up when I decided to draw all their portraits. Actually, it was Ort who came to me during a meditation and basically told me that I need to draw a portrait of every being on the Council of Eight there it is. There she is. Yeah. And share them on Facebook, which I would not have ever considered doing anything like that. Putting my artwork out there, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want any nasty comments. I'm not an artist. Who am I to put this stuff out there? But he told me that it's important that I do. And I guess it had to do with the whole idea of disclosure. The way he explained it to me is that disclosure is not going to happen with ETs landing on the White House lawn. It's going to start with our star families basically connecting with us through our higher mind. Whether or not we're aware of it is not necessarily important, but they will be connecting with us. And the time will come when we will be able to recognize them. It will be like you're at the grocery store and you're running into somebody that you knew when you were a child and you were very good friends with this person, but you can't quite place them where you knew them from, but you do know them. And it's going to be just like that. It's going to be like recognizing somebody that you've known forever. It's somebody who's very close to you, very intimate, very friendly, very personable. And it's going to be a gradual thing. Not everybody's going to experience that all at once. It all depends on where each individual is as far as what they're ready for and what they want to have, the degree of contact that they want to experience. So that's why he asked me to draw these portraits, and he asked me to put that message out there. So I just did. And if you'd like, I can show you some of the other portraits of the Council of Eight and just kind of give you a little brief story about how they came to be. The very first one that I drew wasn't even intentional. I was having kind of a rough day and I was sad. And so I decided I was going to sit down and I was going to draw something. And I started drawing this. Do you see it? Is it there? There it is. This guy. I was drawing the face of an ET. And I drew sunglasses on his face, and I'm going, this doesn't look right. And I went to erase them, and I heard in my head, don't erase them. They make me look cool. And as it turns out, I didn't know who he was, but I told Kevin about him. And this is Zark. He is he's an engineer. He's a propulsion systems engineer. And he's a mathematician. And he's a gray. He's actually a short gray. Who's from the Pleiades and has 2 offspring. Now, this is according to Kevin. I didn't get this information. The information that I got from Zark was that he is absolutely hilarious and loves to laugh at himself. He wanted a beanie hat. So I gave him that. And the mom tattoo that you see right there on the forearm, that was somebody else's idea. And I asked him if he wanted it, and he thought it was great. The light bulb is supposed to represent the idea of us lightening up on ourselves in order to become enlightened. So that was his message there is, we need to lighten up. And so this is Zark, that equation on his T-shirt right there. That's something that was given to Kevin Briggs. Apparently, it's an equation that has to do with, I guess, creating from consciousness, a process of creation out of consciousness. And I don't understand this equation, but he wanted it on his T-shirt, so I put it there. And he made me laugh. I was having a rough day, and he made me laugh. The way he came, I had no idea what I was going to draw. But little by little, his personality started to come through. And what was really remarkable about him was that he would say things that were funny to me. But then I could also feel him, why he felt that was funny. So it became funny from 2 different perspectives. And that was amazing to understand why he thought it was funny at a emotional level. He shared that emotion with me. And I was surprised because I was under the impression that grays don't have emotions. And that's not true. Apparently, there are grays who are very emotional, and Zark happens to be one of them. So
What's funny to me is looking at this picture. I keep like putting Paul, the movie Paul.
yes,
I keep
yes,
putting him next to
yes,
Zark and thinking
exactly.
these two could be brothers or twins. And I'm wondering if
Yeah,
Paul was modeled after him.
that's a good point. I don't know. That's a good point. But after I finished it, I realized, yeah, you know what? He is like that guy. Oh, look, he doesn't smoke. You remember the Paul in the movie, how he smoked
Yeah.
cigarettes? I thought that was hilarious. But anyway, yeah, Zark is he's very much like that. Very funny, very compassionate, very loving, very tender, not a mean bone in his body. And he's just, he's silly. He's very silly. Let's see. After I drew Zark, I think I did yes, I did D. I was gonna do whatchamacallit. I was going to do Ort, but Dee said that he could wait his turn because she had things to do. So that's what happened. And after that, I drew Ra. Now, Ra, spelled R-A-H, is not the Egyptian god Ra. This is a different Ra. He is apparently a ninth dimensional being who no longer incarnates. And he identifies himself as Anunnaki. I guess that must have been his last incarnation. I'm not quite sure because there are no Anunnaki anymore. But that's how he introduces himself. And I drew this image of him thinking about the Egyptian god Ra because there is some Egyptian connection there. There are some past life connections. I remembered a couple of past lives that I had with Ra, and that was pretty fascinating as I was drawing this. But this is just sort of a mixture of a bunch of like Byzantine, medieval style jewelry. I remembered a past life with him on a battlefield. Kevin Briggs actually channels Ra, and it was pretty weird to sit there with Ra telling me that he recognizes my soul. That was an interesting experience. So, in any case, that's one form of Ra. I also drew a group picture of the Council of Eight, and he looks like an Anunnaki in that drawing. And just to kind of mention the Anunnaki a little bit, I know they have a really bad rep because of Zechariah Stitchin. I think that's his name. He what is it, Book of Enoch, I think it is, where he tells basically how the Anunnaki came to Earth and genetically manipulated the humanoids that were here to create a slave race. That seems to be the ongoing story with the Anunnaki. And
Right.
Humanity, groups of humans have done horrible things like that, but the whole of humanity is not that way. And so that's one of the things that I want to emphasize about the Anunnaki, is that the group that was indeed here may not have had, the best intentions in mind, but the whole of Anunnaki civilization is not that. Okay, they're not represented by the group of beings who are here and did things that they weren't supposed to do. So when I posted this one on Facebook, a lot of people got very, very angry. And so I tried to explain that, one small group of beings does not make the whole civilization and what they stand for. In any case, one funny thing about this drawing is, I don't know if you can see the little, what are those Egyptian bugs? Scarabs.
The scarabs,
I have here. Yeah, well, I was outside on my balcony when I was drawing, and I had a red pen, and the wind came and flipped the page over my red pen. So I had this ugly red mark on my drawing, and I was just upset. So I actually drew these little scarabs on a separate piece of paper, and I cut them out and I glued them on to cover up the red mark. And I figured, they were perfect because, they're Egyptian bugs. So that's kind of the story with Ra. Let's see. After Ra, I'm trying to remember who I drew so I could do them in order. Oh, yes. After Ra, I drew this She is a bioengineer, and she is a tall white. And her name is Arla. Let's see, I think this is the good one. She was also another being that I had trouble connecting with. Do you see it? Did you get it? Oh, you can share up to 10 images at once. So I guess we need to get rid of some of those, is the message that I'm getting. So let's see. Remove. Let me see. I'm going to remove the ones that we saw already. Let's try it again. There she is. Yeah, she is a bioengineer. She is very high frequency being. In fact, I cheated a little bit because I really couldn't connect with her at first. It was, I kept trying to, I meditated and I thought about her and I just couldn't get a hold of her. So what I did, there's this other image of her. Kevin Briggs has some drawings that somebody else did of these beings. And so this is what she looked like in his drawing. And so I started tracing her on my paper, and that's when she came to life. And so once I got, a fix on her, I realized that I was only reaching my highest frequency that I was capable of was only reaching the very bottom, the lower ends of hers. So it was very little overlap. And that's why I had such a hard time connecting with her at first. Once we connected, it was fine after that because I was able to capture her energy. And that's what I put in the drawing that I ended up making of her. But it really gave me a sense of how low my frequency is compared to some of these beings. And I don't know if some of the other ones maybe tried a little harder to lower their frequency to my level so that I could get a fix on them. I'm not really sure. She was very aloof. I'm not saying she was mean. She wasn't mean or condescending in any way. But she was, I don't know. I'm probably projecting my own insecurities onto her. She really didn't want to be bothered with what I was doing. Yeah. But she wasn't mean or anything. It was just, you know what? We are in different worlds kind of a thing. And
one thing I've found with the different densities that they're living in is when they try to come in, let's say they're in fifth density, as we call it.
mm-hmm.
Well, we were in third, we shifted to fourth, but we're still below their density. And so it's really hard for them to come back into our density because I've heard on occasion they can get stuck and then have to work their way back out, or they just can't operate in our density because it's too heavy for them.
Yeah, I've heard those things as well. I don't know whether or not that was her case. I didn't get the sense that was her issue. There was something else. I've heard other people say that tall whites seem to be more aloof and just sort of distant, but I don't know. I connected with another tall white who was nothing like that. So I'm not sure, but she is a bioengineer. Let's see. The one I drew after that. Yeah, go ahead.
They have their own personalities too, just like we do. And so
absolutely.
It could just be that's her mannerisms and she's not being aloof. It's just who she is. And
yeah, that's the sense I got too. It wasn't anything personal. It was that's just how she is. This next one that I drew is a avian. And I love this drawing because it's so colorful and so fun. Let me see if this is the one that I want to put up because I have different filters on some of them. Let's see if that comes up. Her name is Arna. Yeah, this is a good one. I have different filters on some of them because some of them look better on my phone and some of them look better on my computer screen. In any case, she was amazing. She has this very chic style about her. She reminded me of a French woman from the 20s, which is probably why her feathers look the way that they do. I initially made her beak long. It was like, if you can see all the way up, it went all the way up between her eyes up here. And she came to me while I was meditating and made it very clear that her nose does not look like that. She's not a duck. And this is what it looks like, the shorter. And you can kind of see I tried to cover it, recolor it. And there's a little bit of a contrast between, the shade that's up here and the rest of her face. But I think it works okay. But that's why I actually had to change it, because she was not going to have it. And I have to admit, I love the way that these feathers turned out. I don't know how I did that, but I look at them and I'm like, wow. Just to me, that looks really, really cool. And this pink stuff around her, that's actually light language, is what she told me. I have no idea what it says, but I like looking at it. And these other things on the sides are other symbols. There's some little white ones. I don't know if you can see them. Those are some universal symbols that I got someplace else. I forget where exactly. And then these other symbols with the blue, it's basically a lot of symbols, but the pink is the part that she wanted me to do for her. And I just sort of figured, we're doing symbols, so let's, fill up the rest of the page with that. Apparently, when Kevin met the Council of Eight, when he was, I think, a teenager, he saw, when he met Chica, he was very intimidated. And Arna comforted him. She's very empathic, and she went up to him and, basically comforted him, because I guess Chica, when Kevin thought that Chica was a grasshopper, Chica gave him that look. And it kind of froze Kevin in his little tracks. So anyway, that's kind of the backstory, the backstory behind that. But she was a lot of fun to draw. Very, very chic, I would have to say. Let's see. After Arna, I drew Targ. Targ is another gray. Yeah. Here he is. Now, what's interesting is that this one also has the rainbow colors in it, just like Zark did. Zark was black and white or gray, and so is Targ. Now, Targ was very difficult to connect with. Apparently he's in charge of the security of our quadrant of the galaxy. And so he seems to be in and out of different dimensions constantly. So I drew him so that he doesn't feel like he's actually here. This is more like a projection, or a hologram, not quite a hologram, but just like a projection of his presence, because he didn't actually come for me to draw him. That's what I got. Just sort of, I'm busy right now. This is what you get, kind of a thing. But again, they are very loving and they're very friendly. And this is just how they want it to be portrayed. And so this rainbow here is supposed to be sort of light that's kind of, all the different, I guess the light spectrum breaking apart, sort of like a portal. He's coming through a portal is basically what it's supposed to represent. And he is not fully here. He's just sort of projecting, I guess, his energy into the space. This is not actually a portrait of him himself. But Kevin actually told me that he really does look just like that. So that was a nice confirmation that I got his likeness.
Yeah. It almost looks like he's in a uniform around
yes,
the neck.
He is. Yeah, and you know what? I am so proud of how I made that look sort of translucent. I don't know how I did that, but it looks cool.
It does.
It does, doesn't it? I thought that looks really cool. Let's see. There is one more that I drew, and I know the council refers to themselves as the Council of Eight, but there is one other being. There's an angelic being who is actually she sits at the right hand of Ra, symbolically speaking, and her name is Shiva. And she was a trip to draw because she came with this multidimensionality that basically was more than my bandwidth could handle. Just to give you one example, she wanted this blue scarf wrapped around her, but she wanted it in the shape of a whale tail. And the stars on it are the star Sirius in all the different realities where it appears. Not only is it the star Sirius, but it's both Sirius A and Sirius B. And one of them deals with the dogs. One of them is a dog star. I forget which one it is. And the other one has to do with the ocean and cetaceans, from what I understand. There's a connection there. And so just in her scarf alone, there's that. And the whole thing with these symbols on her dress, these were Celtic symbols that I don't know why she wanted on there. I think she mentioned something about being incarnated in that culture at some point in time, but she emanated this incredibly strong energy. So that's what I tried to depict here with all of this stuff going around her. And she's got these massive wings that are just like enormous. Again, I didn't see her, but that's what she felt like to me. Apparently, she hangs out with Ra as an orb. But in physical form, if she had physical form, this is what she would look like. And this blue part down here is both the ocean and the sky, the night sky. So it's both the top and the bottom, the sky and the ocean. There were a lot of paradoxes and just opposites paradoxes basically in her, with the information that she came with. I actually don't remember what all I got from her, and I'm glad that I wrote it down, because I write down my experience after I draw these beings. I write down what that was all about, and if I got any messages. But I honestly don't remember much about her because she was just in a completely different realm. Like I said, I was so tired afterwards after I drew her, because it was just so much that she had to communicate. And it's like I've got this little funnel and she's got this massive, tank of information that she was trying to communicate with me. And I'm just trying to, fit it in this little funnel to go in my head. So I tried as best I could, and that was how she came out. And she feels right. This is basically how she felt to me, very larger than life and overwhelming. And there is one last drawing that has to do with the Council of Eight, and that's a group portrait that I did of them.
While you're pulling that up, what's interesting to me with Shiva is I look at it, and depending where I'm looking, I could see artistic similarities to all the different cultures around the world. It's like the head and the face. It's like I look at that and I'm like, that almost has like the ancient Chinese feel to it, artistic style. And
yes, she does.
The wavy hair is like the medieval Europe where they're like that, and the wing, and it's like I can kind of see, and it's almost like I feel like she's the bridge between here and them.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, there's one other thing I want to point out that I just remembered. These swirls up here at the top, the two of them that kind of look like eyes. Yes. She actually came through with another being, with a dragon. She was riding this dragon, this mountain dragon. that I also drew a portrait of. He's kind of in the background for us. He came through for a person who actually asked me to draw a portrait for them at that time. But that's his energy in the back, because she came riding him. It was quite a sight. It was quite a sight.
Yeah, I was thinking the top looked like a dragon, but
yes, it is. I'll show you that image here in a minute. Actually, let's bring that one up next so you can see it while we're talking about it. That way you can see it in context, and then we'll show you the group picture. So let me see here.
Because it's like, yeah, as I'm looking at the image, it's like what we're calling the wings. Looks like it's his mouth.
Yes. The dragon, this is him back here in the background with the eyes. And this in the front, this is one of his daughters. And she came through for somebody who wanted me to draw a portrait for them. This entire drawing, there were so many synchronicities with this woman's life. It was unbelievable. And for the very first time, I actually got a word of a stone, a peridot. I guess I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but that's a little green stone. Peridot, yeah. And the onyx, those two had to be there. And she showed me her rings. And those were the two stones that she was wearing, which was interesting. But the dragon is right here in the background, and it kind of gives you an idea of how massive he is. He was literally a mountain, and he's a healer, and he purrs. And he purred, and I could feel my entire body vibrate itself into shape, into the right frequency, like he tuned me somehow. It was an incredible experience. I never knew that dragons could purr, but this one does. So that, yeah. That's the story.
What's interesting to me is, like you say, he's as big as a mountain. We always depict dragons living in mountains or flying around the mountains.
Interesting. Huh. Oh my gosh. I just got this image just now. He wasn't a mountain. He was a volcano.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Because the mountain that I saw was no longer a volcano. It was just you could tell that it was an old mountain. It was round because it had, because of erosion. But at one point, that mountain was a volcano. And I just got that now. And I have no idea why I am so sure that that's what he said. But yeah.
What could be interesting about that is I've read some materials that are not the normal books about dragons. And they would talk about how dragon's fire would melt steel. And so what do we have on this planet that can do that? Lava. So it's almost like there's a correlation of, the volcanoes with the dragons and the mountains all connected. Wow. And that might be their source or their home.
That could be. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Wow. Yeah, just stuff to think about and contemplate. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. So let's bring up the last one, the Council of the Group portrait of the Council of Eight. This is probably one of my least favorite drawings, but everybody else seems to like it. There's too much in it. I tried to put all of the different characters in it, and they each have their own personality, and it just seems to be too overwhelming. But the whole idea, the most important part of this drawing is the empty chair. That's Ort over there, basically inviting humanity to sit at the galactic table with the rest of the advanced civilizations. And so we have an open invitation. All we have to do is just show up. And we're in. So how are we going to show up? I guess remains to be decided. We're still deciding that. But this is pretty much all of them. You know, there's Ort and D from the bottom there to the left. And then there's Arna in the back and Zark with the peace sign. And there's in the center there is Ra, you know, as an Anunnaki. And the orb right above him right there, that's Shiva. And then next to him is Targ. There's Chica, and then the last one in the front here with the blue eyes, that one is Arla, the tall white. So there's just you know, a lot of energy going on here. Like I said, it's not one of my favorites because there seems to be, it's overwhelming. But Kevin liked it so much, he actually wants to put it on the cover of our book. So yeah.
I like how, you know, the table is rectangular, but yet circle in the middle that everything seems to be emanating from. And I've been hypothesizing, and so has some other people, like King Arthur and the Round Table. They were star beings. They weren't like us here, and so that's why their story is so different. And the Round Table is always the one piece. It doesn't matter what book you read on the Arthurian legends, you know, who was a knight, who wasn't a knight. The one fact that remained is it was a round table.
Interesting.
And it's in the middle of your table, and everything seems to be emulating around it. Yeah. But it's still rectangular.
Yeah, it was the best way that I could put it together in the picture, because the whole idea of trying to make it round didn't seem to fit. There was too much curvature. There needed to be something that anchored the throwing in place, but it still needed to be round. This roundness that you're mentioning, that was important.
And the other thing was the Shiva, the orb. I didn't see that as the orb. My first thought when I looked at it was that's the Eye of Ra.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
That's another tie to Egypt.
Right. That's interesting. Huh. I didn't think of it that way. Wow. Well, that's the story with the Council of Eight. They're a pretty fascinating group of beings. They really are.
And I have to say, you know, as much as you are like talking about, you know, you like some of these more than others, honestly, looking at each one of them, I could not, in my mind, pick a favorite and say, that's, you know, the best one of this person, or this is really, I mean, it's amazing. And one of the things that reminded me when you were talking about how you have no training in art and all of a sudden you were drawing these so realistic. I remembered when I was a teenager, I watched Star Trek The Next Generation, and they did the hologram episode where Data is Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And I went to sleep, and the next day I got a sketch pad and I started sketching, and I made a 3D image of the holodeck scene of Sherlock Holmes's house, and I showed it to my parents, and my parents were like, "Did you just draw that?" I said, "Yeah, I wasn't even looking at the show. It was like I just did this from memory." And so there are times that I wonder if either a memory of something we've experienced or something that is being channeled to us is why it comes through in the way that it does.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's the case. Definitely. You know, we cannot experience what we're not the vibration of. So if you are in a particular frequency, you're going to be experiencing things that are of that frequency. So if that holodeck resonated with you on some deep level, past life, or however you want to think about it, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense, especially if you say that you drew it with so much detail. That's significant.
I know. I
For
almost
sure.
wish I still had it so I could use it, but I don't. And I'm like, I don't think I could recreate it either.
Yeah, the first one is always the best, because I've tried to redo drawings and it's just, nah. Second time, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It just misses something.
Well, we're almost to the hour and a half mark, and
Okay.
I just want to give you a chance if you have anything you want to promote out beyond the book, as you mentioned, or any projects coming up.
I don't really have anything to promote. Feel free to share the link to my Google Drive for my artwork, because everything that we've gone over is there, and it's free to download and share for everybody. I don't charge anything. I have a GoFundMe account for people who want to make a donation, because I use that money to go see Bashar every year. It's expensive. Yeah, my September ritual, I go see Bashar. But yeah, I was able to get, this past September when I went, I got the seat. I don't know if you're familiar with Bashar, but when he's
Mhm.
on stage, there's a microphone where people come to talk. My seat was right next to the microphone. It was right in front of him. I could not have been any closer. And it was awesome. It was so awesome. And I'm so grateful to the people who, donate, because I use that for my travel expenses. It helps. It helps. So, but nobody has to donate anything. I'm not saying that, to convince anybody to give me money. You don't have to do that. But yeah, some people have asked, they've wanted to pay me, and I said, well, I'm not supposed to charge, for one thing, because these are meant to be shared freely. Plus, I don't think, and you and I have talked about this, I don't think it's fair to have to pay for things that are meant to be shared widely, like that, just widely to everybody. That's what I've been told that my portraits are for, is to be shared. So I don't charge. Plus the nightmare of intellectual property. Oh my gosh, who wants to go through that? I don't want to have to police the internet. This person posted my drawing and they didn't ask for permission or didn't give me credit, whatever. They're there to be shared. So
All
yeah,
right.
feel free to share that link.
If you send it to me again, because I think it's buried
Sure.
in the chat, and so I'll
No
post
problem. I
it
can definitely do that.
into everything. And thank you so much for sharing everything with us and sharing your art with us. That was amazing to see and feel, actually, even.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Thank you for giving me the chance to just go on and on and on about my favorite subjects.
Oh, it was
That was
fascinating,
a
and
lot of fun.
I
Yeah.
was like, I looked at the time and I was like, how did the time go by so
Oh, I
fast?
know, right? Yeah. And so now we're later where I am, because I'm on the East Coast. We just had the rocket, the Artemis, just
Oh
launched
yeah,
today. Yes, they're on the way to the moon. We got to see. I live in Cape Canaveral, so I'm just a few miles away from the Kennedy Space Center, and we got to watch it off our balcony. It's pretty amazing.
I bet you got to feel it too.
Yes, it was pretty loud. It was pretty loud. Yeah, but it's good. It'll be interesting to see what they run into out there and how much of it they'll share with us.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, I have a little message for you that I like to wrap up every show with,
sure.
and that is from my heart and the heart of my shows to you. Thank you for what you're doing for humanity.
Oh my gosh. That's so sweet. Oh, thank you. That's yeah. Don't make me cry now. I didn't bring my tissues. They're over there. That's very sweet of you. Very kind. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yes,
And
and hopefully we'll have you on again.
yeah, that would be great. I have other drawings that I can share. Be wonderful.
Well, then, for everyone watching, make sure you follow and subscribe wherever you're at, whatever platform. I can't keep track of it all myself, and because you never know when she'll be popping back on. And so, thank you to everyone in the chat room. And everyone who's watching, thank you so much. Have a wonderful night and a wonderful week, and we will see you on the next episode. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.